Hey everybody, my name's Democracy, and today we're checking out some of the most pathetic excuses for a challenge in the Souls series. That's right, it's time for the top 10 easiest bosses. This list is 100% based on my own experience, and I had a way harder time narrowing down this list than the hardest bosses. I think the harder bosses just stand out more since they spend so much more time annihilating me. So instead of a top 10, we're doing a top 11. And to make it even easier on me, I omitted a few bosses. First, Yorm the Giant. Sure, he's a joke if you use the Storm Ruler, but the challenge is up quite a bit if you don't. Second, Ancient Wyvern, because number one, just like Yorm, you could do things the hard way. And two, this fuck. Last and certainly least, True King Allant, because really guys, really, this potato, easiest boss of all time. So without further ado, let's jump in at number 11. This is maybe the only boss in the list I feel might be kinda controversial. There were a lot of commenters in the Dark Souls 3 boss rankings that said the Crystal Sage was the bane of their existence. But for my specific playstyle, this is exactly the kind of boss that I dominate. Most of the Sage's attacks boil down to slow moving spells, allowing an easy sprint up to close quarters. Once there, the only way for it to fend you off is a pathetic melee swipe, so all I really do when fighting the Sage is rush in, beat it down, watch the coward disappear, locate him, and then repeat. Of course, there is the part with all the copies, but they all die in one hit and can be avoided rather easily by just running around frantically. The main reason the Sage doesn't rank higher is even though fighting it can be easy, those spells do some massive damage. I could totally see how low vigor builds could struggle here, or maybe if dodging magic isn't your strong suit. For me though, the Sage will go down as one of those laughers that I just breeze by every playthrough. Speaking of bosses that spawn magic shooting copies, our number 10 boss is more of a fool than an idol. I say this because she clearly has a death wish. Yeah, look at it, she just sits there and takes it in the beginning. Once she finally musters up the energy to move, she proceeds to keep doing the same thing. Sure, she and her doppelgangers fire soul arrows at you every now and again, but most of the time she just sits there reading a book. That's right, this bookworm would rather brush up on her spell tomes than fight you. She probably should too, since she can't even match the size of her clone's magic. This makes her easy to identify, giving you an easy kill. In the same vein as the Sage though, I have to give credit to the strength of these spells. If you get hit by too many, you could actually find yourself dead. But like I said before, the downtime she gives you is more than enough to heal and defeat her without even breaking a sweat. Oh god, I can't believe I'm talking about you again. Yeah, let's make this quick, and that won't be too difficult considering all I had to do to kill this nastiness was lure him to the boss fog, smack his hand a little bit, and goodbye. Okay, there's a little more to it. I'll be completely honest with you guys. The first time I faced this guy was directly after fighting Quelaag. I wandered down here and figured it was the next fight. Then he relieved his load on me and killed me in one hit. Once I figured out he was better left for later in the game, I had a much easier time. I didn't actually know you could knock him off until I was doing research for the boss ranking run, but that certainly makes him easier than he already is. So I'll leave the discharge toward the bottom of the list since I died to him a few times in my first playthrough, but as of today, he's one of the biggest jokes in Souls for me. While we're talking about jokes, we've got this band of blue goobers. I was really confused the first time I walked into the arena. Keep in mind that I had only played Dark Souls and Demon Souls prior to Bloodborne, so my only experience with something like this was Phalanx. I recalled killing a couple of these guys in the Forbidden Woods easily and was thinking, really, is this it? I was racking up a kill streak until I finally noticed one hanging in the back. I ran up to him, R1 spam like a professional, and he died. That was it. And that's been the story of every boss fight with him since, except I don't even waste time killing anything else. Instead, I baited them all away, then rush in and slaughter the boss. The only thing keeping the emissary lower on the list is you can be punished if you aren't careful. I've gotten crazy greedy when underestimating them only to get destroyed. Even so, the celestial emissary is definitely my second easiest boss of this type. And that's because the Deacons are by far the easiest. Whereas Celestial Emissary's minions actually come after you, the Deacons stay grouped at all times. On one hand, you could say this makes it harder to get to the boss, but honestly, the Red Deacon for me is almost always on the border of the mob. Even if it wasn't, it's incredibly easy to just massacre your way to it. As far as attacks, they've got weak fireballs, weak melee attacks, and this Wrath of the Gods knockoff. Not really anything to strike the fear in you. Honestly, I feel like bosses of this type were intended more as a puzzle boss than an actual challenge. The Deacons are the best example because they have the worst ability to actually do damage to you. You know, the thing that actually makes you lose in these games? So while Phalanx, Royal Rat Vanguard, and Celestial Emissary could all be deserving of this spot, I personally find the Deacons to be the easiest of the bunch. Keeping with the church-related theme, our number 6 boss is Prowling Magus and his mighty congregation. I'm gonna start off by giving them one piece of credit, and it's the only reason they're not in the top 5. This is really hard for me to say, guys, but I have a confession to make. I got wrecked by this boss in less than 10 seconds my first time facing them, okay? Whew, I said it. My most embarrassing Souls confession. So yeah, I admit it, I died to this stupid easy boss. When I walked in, I was not expecting a boss fight. When I saw all those enemies, I panicked, rushed straight at them, only to get blasted by magic, beaten by ankle biters, and KO'd by Magus in just a few seconds. Once I knew what I was up against though, it was a breeze. It's really just a rectangular room full of basic enemies. For that reason, I think even calling this a boss is being generous. Once I realized the benches work perfect as cover and I can just destroy all the enemies in a handful of hits, I've never really struggled since. But because they got me once, they've saved themselves a spot in the top 5. Jabba the Hutt isn't quite as lucky. I can't say I've ever died to this envious collection of blubber. And with reaching the top 5, I would say I consider this the territory of bosses where I have to actually actively try if I want to die against them. Covetous Demon falls in this category because his attacks are so damn slow, his windup is absurdly generous, and his only attack worth a damn is nearly impossible for him to land without your assistance. I really wanted a shot of this for the boss ranking video, so I repeatedly tried to stand in front of him to bait it, and he wouldn't even use the attack. Once he finally did, he left me naked. But it didn't matter, because he still got the agility of a 1,000-year-old tortoise. Just give him the fist to end his suffering. Like a few of the bosses below him, his only minor redeeming factor is his damage. If you get hit by some of his fiercer belly flops, you're in for a world of hurt, so I think 5 is a good spot. Coming in at number 4, we've got another fatty. The Adjudicator has got to have the longest windups in the entire series. You could probably run a lap around this blob in the time it takes him to bring down his cleaver. So I can't even comment on the guy's damage because I honestly don't even remember if I've ever been hit by the guy. I did, however, completely forget his weakness in my boss run. Oh yeah, it's this gaping wound. I honestly don't know how I missed it. Once I knocked him down, my jaw hit the floor at how much damage he took. I actually stopped hitting him because I was worried I wouldn't get enough footage for the video. So then I ran behind him to wait for an opportunity to take him down again, and then what? Replay that! He killed himself! Do I really have to say anything else? After watching one boss commit confusing suicide, we've got a boss at number 3 that you can make commit hilarious suicide. I love that. I'm not sure if there was a more satisfying kill early in Dark Souls 2 than watching this idiot flail off the end of the arena. So putting aside that ridiculously easy kill, fighting him straight up is nearly as easy. Just strafe, dodge his highly telegraphed swipes, and then punish. This boss honestly rivals the Taurus Demon for me for bosses that are a complete snooze fest. There you go, you want a list inside of a list? Most boring Souls series bosses, here we go. Number 5, Board of the Butterflies. Number 4, Dragon Diver. Number 3, Ballista Simulator 2009. Number 2, Boros Demon. And for the number 1 most boring boss in the Souls series, we've got our number 2 easiest boss. Have you ever thought to yourself, golly gee, FromSoft, instead of fighting a boss, you know what I'd love to do? Run around like an idiot looking for an invisible punching bag. Look, even the help isn't interested. I kid. To be honest with you, I actually enjoy the concept of this fight, but that does not make it difficult. My first time battling the witches probably took me at least 5 minutes because I didn't understand what was going on. Normally in these games, confusion like that is lethal, but here the accompanying enemies plain do not give a shit that you're there. So the only danger in this fight is losing your sanity while running in circles. Even though a second one pops up later in the fight and they pathetically try to lock you in place, it's just so easy to dodge. This boss just nearly made it to the top, but I'm sure many of you have been waiting for one boss in particular. Were you honestly expecting anybody else to get the #1 spot? This fight is just so damn easy. It takes no effort. You just walk in and he's dead. Thank you for being dead. I'm sure some players did stumble in here for a harder fight in the early game, but I've never done it myself. So Pinwheel usually falling in the middle of my playthroughs, this boss is more of a speed bump than anything else. The literal thought going through my head when running in here is, God, I have to fight Pinwheel again? I can think of a million better ways to spend the next 10 seconds. Isn't there a way to skip this? Nope, sorry, he's mandatory. You know, I really hope FromSoft keeps with the fan service vibe in the Dark Souls 3 DLC. Could you imagine how hard people would riot if Pinwheel returned in the DLC as one of the hardest bosses of all time? Maybe like the Nameless King, he can be riding on a beast. Then you should also give him Alana's ability to summon other bosses and let him summon Manus. Oh, and you fight in the Bed of Chaos arena. And if you somehow manage to get through the first phase and let him power up, he does so by tearing off his mask to reveal... It was Solaire the whole freaking time! Praise the sun, you Really though, those are just pipe dreams to make this fight more interesting. As it stands, it's undoubtedly my choice for the easiest boss in Soulsborne. Well everyone, I hope you enjoyed checking out my choices for the easiest bosses in Soulsborne. Now it's your turn to sound off in the comments on which bosses you find the easiest. Next up we're gonna do the worst bosses in the series, so be sure to subscribe for more awesome Soulsborne content. I wanna thank y'all for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.